Catus Maximus here. ThruNite sent over another flashlight. They're one of the biggest supporters this channel's ever had. Them, Koken Tools, and Ulsa Tools are the big supporters of my channel. So this is the ThruNite T2, which is a 21700 cell, one of these larger cell based hiking floodlight, I should say. We know it's a floodlight because it has a very shallow lens, which means it's going to put out a wide beam. And we can see the orange peel in there, which is going to cause more cross reflection. And so, in saying that, it's rated at like 3700 lumens, so it still has a pretty decent hotspot. But it's still quite a bit more flood than, say, the TT20 here. TT20 is only rated for 2500 lumens, but it has a much deeper lens and is a fully reflector and a fully polished reflector, which means it's going to concentrate the beam much more. So this is going to have more throw than this, even though this has like 30% more lumens. But this is, quite a bit more compact than the TT20. And let's finish the unboxing, since I always have to do that. We have our little manual. We do include a little package here. We include our lanyard with the obligatory spare port covers and spare port covers and spare O-rings, and some silica gel to chew on. I actually do not eat silica gel. Anyway, and we include a little USB cable here. It is USB-C charging, and overall I think it's not a bad little light. It doesn't have a lot of features, not very good controls because it's only low, medium, high, and back to low. If you press and hold, you get a firefly mode. And it does have an electronic lockout, I will give them that. So what happens is you press and hold, it goes into firefly, you press and hold again, and that locks it out. So when you press the button, pretty dim little LED, it is a neat little metal button. It won't accidentally turn on in your pocket, so I appreciate that. I was noticing that this T2, and some of the comments online have also mentioned that it seems to have this is one of their earlier lights, and it seems to have a really aggressive driver or voltage regulator, where as soon as the voltage starts to drop off, probably within the first 5 or 10 minutes of usage, even though it will overheat and will dim down because of overheating, if you just go into turbo and turn it off, and then the battery voltage drops some, that when you go back into turbo, it'll immediately dim itself down when it detects the lower voltage. And it's a little disappointing. Unlike the TT20, well, you can repeatedly go back into turbo until it's either red hot or until the battery's dead. So I will recognize that. And there has been some other comments, and I'll admit I did want to mention that too. This ThruNite does recess the USB-C port, or the USB port, pretty deep into the body of the flashlight, but they don't machine out a very wide area. So for instance, not this one, come on now, so hard to reach around. If you have like one of these USB-C chargers, there we go, I'm all confused, that has one of these kind of wider plugs, the plug will actually get caught up on the body and it won't charge, and it's kind of annoying. So I had to find one of these USB-Cs that has a really, really narrow body on it. Fortunately, the cable that it comes with does have a pretty narrow body on it. But it's something to make note of, is that this won't accept a lot of USB-C cables simply because this area around the port is too big and you can't fully seat it into the charge port. I do like that this does pop out and swings open pretty good. And it seems to have a tight enough fit where it's not going to, it'll keep the rain out. Also, I was noticing is the port cover doesn't really want to seat very well on this light for some reason. You really got to mash it and squish it around to try to get it to seat in there. Other than that, not a whole lot else to say about this unit. Let me get some of this garbage out of the way. Anyway, nowadays this can be got for a little bit cheaper. It does come with a pocket clip, which I think is kind of neat. Because this one didn't actually. Other than that, when I was opening it up, initially I was pretty scared. Because when I opened it up, it had one of these. It is a 5000 milliamp cell. Of course, it's a IMR. I believe it says that somewhere. Anyway, it's a protected cell, but it's one of these crazy ones which has this little insulator around the nub, and it actually has the negative terminal, and that's a battery that's used by this light right here. And you can barely see in there, but there's like a weird metal ring that actually engages this proprietary battery. And initially I was like, oh no, that's no good because it needs a totally proprietary battery. But I was looking in the head, no, it just has a standard nub. Just for some reason they decided to include this battery. But it turns out that if you use a more standard cell, this is also protected, but this is just a more standard with the nub cell, that something like this works just fine in it. So in my situation, since I have a TT20, what it ends up meaning is that I have a spare battery for the TT20, and I'll end up just using this one actually in this light here. Although because this takes, you know, a regular 21700s, I think it would have been a nice little bonus, since they're already charging like $60 or something for this light, that they probably should have just included the power bank battery. That way people could have used it. It even has this little handy feature where you can press and hold, and it has an integrated level meter on it. And I think that would have been a nice touch. Alright, I'm over at my usual testing spot. So if we just go straight into turbo, you can barely make the trees out over there. This is the same distance I've tested a few other flashlights, so it just doesn't have much throw. As you can see, it's just entirely flood. Huge amount of flood. Low, medium. So this is high, and this is what you'd walk your dog with or something, and it's actually not too bad. This is its sustained brightness. And then once again, there's the turbo. So a floodlight, I think it's overall not too bad. It's just a shame that the electronics are so aggressive that as soon as the battery loses just some of its energy, it drops back down to just high mode. It does get pretty warm pretty fast. I can already tell it's about 85 degrees just having it in turbo this long. Alright, so that's my little video about the ThruNite T2. I like the idea that it's a 21700 cell flashlight, so you can get the 5000 milliamp hours. You can get quite a bit of power, but you get a bit smaller diameter. The size of this, it isn't too bad. So for the brightness and decent build quality, it's not a bad light. I see why 21700 based lights are popular, is because once again you get a lot more energy, but you just don't get a lot of the extra diameter like with a 26650 light. They just need to update the electronics so it's gives you variable output, and that would be a nice feature instead of just low, medium, high, and turbo, and then their firefly mode. And instead of coming with the weird battery that it doesn't need at all, I think they should include their little power bank battery. That would be a nice little bonus, is to have this included, so you could use that in certain situations. And I think the last thing to note is they didn't include a key ring with the lanyard. And on some ThruNites they do, but on this one they didn't. And the reason you need a key ring is because this, even though this is aluminum, these little loops on lanyards, if you have it around your wrist and you use it for, I mean, it can last just a couple of weeks of this just swinging on your wrist before this will wear the little string out and the lanyard will break. So they really need to standardize. Any of their lights that come with lanyards really need to come with a ring that prevents the lanyard from getting worn out. Otherwise, coated glass lens, not a whole lot else to say. And I don't know if I can demonstrate it. You can already see it just in a little bit I've been testing, but when you turn it on, it's like a pulse. There's like a pulse of full turbo, and then it drops down some. And that's over aggressive electronics, and they do need to work on that as well. It's disappointing to have a light that says it's 3700 lumens, but quite frankly, a minute or two of turbo use and it will never hit that brightness again. It's just unfortunately over-regulated. And since they're already using a protected battery cell, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense that they have such regulation. I know on like the TT20 and their newer ones, they've changed the electronics. So they really need to have a T2 V2, easiest way to say it. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. Till next time, Catus Maximus out.